Now, how can you know for sure that you are saved? How can you really know? Well, if God has never confronted you with His law, His will, then chances are you're not saved. In other words, it takes coming to a point where God says, this is what I expect from you. You have to come to that point. When we're talking about real salvation here, it's what I call a clash of wills, okay? A clash of, you have your will, God has His will. And until you come to that, and really what I'm talking about is a surrender of your will, but until you come to that, I don't think salvation can exist until you are confronted with His will, His law, and a clash, what I would refer to as a clash of wills. And none of these things really mean that much to me when people say, well, I had an emotional experience and therefore I'm saved, and I gave my heart to the Lord, and I went down to the altar, and I said a prayer, and I signed on the dotted line, and my name is on a church roster somewhere, and I was baptized at age 8. None of that means anything to me. Have you ever come to this point where God says, this is what I want you to do? Luke 22 and verse 42. Luke 22 and verse 42. Jesus, the night He was crucified, He went to His Father and He said, Father, if you be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. Jesus had this experience. It actually happened 3 times. He goes to the Father and He says, I don't really want to do it. But nevertheless, not what I want, but what your will is. Think about this. This is the Son of God. And He's saying, look, I don't really want to go through this. He knew what He was up against. He knew what was about to happen. And He says, but not my will, but your will be done. Real salvation to me is confronted with God's will. This is what real salvation is. How do you know if you're saved? Well, it depends on whether you've been led to that clash of wills before, where you clearly understand, okay, this is what God wants me to do. And you clearly understand, I don't really want to do it. And you clearly come to a point where you say, okay, not my will. I see that this is your will.
Is that really in the Bible? What you think is in the Bible is not.